Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's nGendr Live. It's good to be back. I'm afraid we had a little hiccup and we missed a session because of various people travelling and whatnot, but we're back now, we're raring to go. We've got some good stuff to do. And we've got some new faces, or at least a new face. So I hope nobody else is getting an echo there, because I am. So I'm hoping that goes away. On the show today, we've got myself, Natalie Washington, but also we've got Lisa Seven.
Hello.
We've got Charlotte McCarroll.
Hey.
And a new face, we've got Ashley Curlin, all the way from Australia.
Hello.
Great to have you here. Okay, so as usual, we're looking for people to try and engage with us and send us questions, send us tweets, engage with the conversation, and talk about the various different subjects that we're going to be talking about. Two ways you can do that. One is, as per normal, you can tweet us at n_gender. That's at n_GENDR. We'll be checking that throughout, trying to weave those into the conversation. Or we've got the live chat feature working on YouTube. So if you're looking at our YouTube, on the right hand side, you should have a little live chat feature where you can post us questions there. If you notice any technical difficulties, please let us know via that chat screen. I'm assuming, because nobody said anything, that they're not getting the incredibly awful repetition that I'm getting in my ear. So I'll try and fix that while somebody else is talking. But anyway, we've got three main subjects that we want to talk about today. The first of which is, well, in fact, we'll go the other way. We want to talk about travelling whilst being transgender and how that works for us all. We want to talk about Australia, and Ashley obviously is the expert on that, being from Australia. And first of all, we want to talk about the news that we've had in the recent week or so, that a British Army soldier, infantry soldier, has come out as transgender. It's being billed as the first, well, it's being billed as several things. It's being billed as the first transgender infantry soldier. It's being billed as the first woman on the front line, the first transgender person on the front line, which, well, has varying degrees of truth to it. So what we'll do is we'll open it up to the floor and see what people have to say. So who wants to kick us off on this one?
Well, I think what really got me going was just the overreaction yet again. I'm looking at the Sun headline now, and it says, "Sex change soldier, Britain's first woman to fight after being born a boy." And it's like, oh, again. I mean, last year Hannah Winterbourne came out. The year before we had another soldier. And is it still news? Does it still have to be front page news with all the horrible words? Oh, makes me sick. So,
You're muted.
Go ahead.
No, I think Charlotte's muted.
So,
yeah.
I think for me, it's like, why is this still news? And are they doing it because it's a trans woman on the front line, or are they doing it because it's a woman on the front line? Are they doing it just to think, oh, we can get trans in the news as a news story again? And you just wonder, what's the point of this headline in this day and age? And this poor woman, Chloe's going to cop it all, and goodness knows what she's gone through the last couple of weeks for being this representative, and it's just like, it's not fair.
Yeah.
It's just.
So a quick check. Can people hear me all right now? Because I've had to do some technical shenanigans to try and fix my multiple sound.
I can hear you.
Excellent. Good. Hopefully no one else had that awful sound that I had. So I had a bit of a, I guess, an issue with this story. So, you know, it's great that that trans people can come out in the army these days, and that they're getting the right support. To your point, Lisa, it's absolutely correct. You know, I don't really see why this is particularly newsworthy. You know, she's probably going to cop a lot of abuse for this, and you know, early transition is a difficult time. You kind of want to just be yourself and learn to be yourself, and kind of do that not in the public eye. So it's a difficult one, but also, yeah, I'm a little bit peeved with the fact that every transgender person that comes out now has to be the first transgender X in X or something. This is designed to fabricate a story where I don't really think there is one. And so, you know, we talked about this when Hannah Winterbourne came out, that she was billed as the first transgender person in the army. We know she wasn't. We know there have been others. We know that lots of people have been kicked out of the army in the past for being trans. And, you know, obviously they're not going to celebrate that, but it's erasing to talk about that. Also, I think one of the really problematic things, and one that really doesn't help our cause very much, is that they're talking about her as the first, well, actually there's several things wrong with this. They're talking about her as the first woman on the front line. Now, firstly, we know that's factually inaccurate. I think you may have mentioned this, Lisa, but I was trying to sort my headphones out, so I don't know. But that there was someone on the front line previously.
2 years ago, yeah, Deborah Penny. She's bomb disposal officer in Afghanistan 2 years ago.
Yeah, so that's important, and you don't want to erase them. Secondly, talking about a very newly out trans person who is essentially transitioning in the same role as suddenly being the first woman on the front line, whilst accurate, I don't think helps us as a community, because all it does is engage a whole load of abuse from feminism that we're erasing women, like, and by that I mean cis women, let's be honest. So whether that's true or not, it's not particularly helpful to bill it from that angle, I think. Puts an awful lot of pressure on her, and also contributes to this view that we're somehow erasing cis women. Now, it's a difficult one to approach, that one. But I just think stay away from that. You know, the army hasn't done a great job of gender equality over the years, and they still aren't. And so why help them hide that issue behind another issue? That's just, you know, be interesting to get some other people's views on this. I know it's quite a contentious one, but, you know, test the live chat out, make sure it's working.
In Australia, we had Kate McGregor. When she transitioned, that was made a lot of news. She was in the army, and she was actually working in, I think, the Chief of Staff's office. But she wasn't the first, despite all the media. A friend of mine who was an army squad leader, he had a trans woman in his team 30 years ago, he was telling me. And, you know, he was telling me about what a great learning experience it was for him as the squad leader and for the whole team. And, I mean, you know, there's your real story.
That is, yeah. That's a long time ago.
Yeah. How long people have been out there, really.
Well, exactly. And, you know, there's lots of, I mean, Lisa, Charlotte, I know in the UK, between us, we probably know loads of people trans people who are ex-army or ex-forces. I know several. And they were before them. So, you know, some of them were out, some of them weren't. Some of them left to transition because they didn't feel they could in the army. So I think fundamentally it's just this focus on why people have to be the first. It doesn't always matter that much, and I think sometimes it's just a way of trying to shoehorn a story where there isn't one.
This is the press standards, isn't it? They're trying to think of how, because they're discouraged now from making being trans the story. In the past, that could be the story. Nowadays, it has to be something else, so they don't look as bad. And I wonder if that's what's going on. Like, aha, we can stitch a story around the edges of this and get a trans person on the cover again to stir it up, to get the comments going.
I think it is something that you're going to have to just accept that isn't really going to change that much, and get in front of it. You know, all media is trying to address this vicious 24-hour cycle thing where no news story lasts more than a few hours, and they've got to get something else up to keep the stats rolling over. It's been interesting to see a couple of news sources here in Australia have been embracing trans stories, and I think that really is the way to get in front of it, to actually get more trans people writing the stories. You know, there's been so much talk lately about trans actors doing trans roles in shows and things like Jen Richards and the like, but I think it's important that we get involved in media as well. I mean, SBS, which is the diversity government-run channel here that does media, online media and TV and radio, they've now got a complete arm that's SBS Sexuality, and they're covering a lot of trans issues as part of that. And just recently, BuzzFeed Australia has been really cranking it up, and they've put out a call for trans writers to actually start writing content for them. So they're actually vetting people now, and I've submitted a couple of things for them to consider. So I think you either let media go and do what they do, and we know that they do it badly, or you actually get involved and take control.
Yeah. So I'll have a look. Let's have a look at what the Q&A is saying, because we're getting some good engagement, which is really great to see from people on the Q&A. Firstly, well, YouTube star becoming a trans friend of the show says that actually isn't this soldier the first to serve a combat role on the front line? So yeah, referring to the fact that Deborah Penny was bomb disposal on the front line. So yeah, I think that's probably a valid point. I mean, that's what the story should be here, and I think we talked before about that was the angle that the Telegraph took on it. We've just looked at the Guardian story, and the Guardian story is headed "Transgender Soldier is first female to serve on British Army front line," so that's factually inaccurate. But some of the stories are focusing on what obviously is the real focus here, I guess. So yeah, and of course the ban on women was only in close combat roles was only lifted in July this year. So I guess they have only had 2 months to change that. I wonder if this
they're not even taking applications till November for. So even though the ban's been lifted, they're not taking applications for women into combat roles until November. So one argument has been that cis women haven't even been given a chance to be the first. But yeah, anyway.
No, that's a good point. Thank you. There's some good chat going on in the Q&A, so please weigh in. Someone makes quite an interesting point. Actually, it has crossed my mind before, certainly, that we all know these stories of in the past. I mean, Joan of Arc being one, where where women posed as men, a really problematic statement, but could be accurate in these scenarios. Navy centuries ago weren't trans men, and of course some of them could have been. There's loads of story. History's littered with these stories of ostensibly women that posed as men. There's no other real way of terming that, given what we know, to join the army or the navy. So yeah, it's entirely within the realms of possibility that some of them could have been. So interesting point. So I think we probably don't have too much more on that story for now. But if anyone does have any great points, please weigh in on the chat and let us know, or tweet us. And I should probably check the Twitter for that just before I move on, actually. But no, nothing more on there. So our next story then. So of course we have Ashley, who's joined us today for the first time, all the way from Australia. And obviously, so what we would take advantage of this situation and talk about Australia. So Ashley's been our eyes and ears down under, and is going to talk to us a little bit about what's going on in the trans and non-binary sphere in Australia in a minute, what the big stories are, and we'll just have a little chat about it. So, Ashley, what's the kind of the big stuff that's going on at the moment?
It's actually been a really big few weeks lately with trans stories. We seem to be on the media a fair bit. The Brisbane Pride March last weekend was huge, made a big impact. And the Queensland government has been making some changes to laws that really help the whole LBGTI community, including even expunging past convictions under the laws that they're changing, which is to do with age of consent and the like, which is pretty remarkable. But the huge thing is a plebiscite. The Conservative government, equivalent to your Tories, that were led by Tony Abbott, put forward the idea of having a plebiscite, a non-binding vote of the entire Australian public about the issue of marriage equality. He did it as a deliberate attempt just to stop the push for Parliament to just plain vote on the damn thing, because it's been dominating our media for like 5-6 years. It's just been blanket. And then Tony Abbott got ousted justifiably, and Malcolm Turnbull, unfortunately, instead of changing tack, has just carried on with the same routine. There's been a stack of angst from all of the representative groups about this plebiscite, quite justifiably, because it causes a lot of public animosity, being a $140 million process in one instance, but it also allows a get out of jail free card for all the hate voices out there, and all groups, every single one of them, are really worried that that sort of free reign on hate stuff is going to kill people, basically, and they've been saying so. And just yesterday, news came out that the public support for the plebiscite, which was 70%, has actually plummeted to 39%. So the message is actually getting out there.
Yeah. Okay, well, there's loads going on there. I mean, so from a trans people's perspective, what's kind of the key things that are at stake then in the plebiscite? What does it mean in short detail?
There's two big things. One is from the hate perspective. I would think that it's going to be us, the trans people, being more visible, that are actually likely to be more targeted by any of the hate stuff that goes around. And I'll just say on that side of things, the government actually got caught out that they promised to fund church groups to actually fund the No campaign, No against the vote. And then they said, oh yeah, but we're actually going to give $7.5 million to the Yes case as well. And then they're asked, well, what controls are there going to be on? Is there going to be any requirement on the No case to actually be factual? Oh no, we can't restrain that. So that was all pretty pathetic. And yeah, among all the targeting, the high public profile of trans stories at the moment could just about guarantee would be the most targeted. The other thing is the question itself. It just says, this is classic, do you approve same-sex marriage? Okay, so it's totally a gay thing. It's not about marriage equality. It's not about, do you approve people being able to marry the person that they wish? End of story. No, trans has sort of been left out in the cold, and apparently that went through some sort of focus groups and stuff, and lost in the wash.
Yeah,
That sounds familiar.
Sounds an awful lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had so friend of the show, Rachel Evans, has just made the point on the Q&A that echoes of Brexit in the anti-immigration angle there, which I think it's really the problem is these public conversations about these sorts of issues always whip up public hysteria, and like you said, if there's no kind of focus on facts, then people can say what they want, and it whips up an awful lot of nasty hate, and it's really problematic. I mean, so what do you think would happen if it was just a parliamentary vote?
I'll go. I'm pretty certain that the overwhelming support across the community at large, it would get through. I believe that the party leaders will actually chicken out on being a forced vote, you know, like all the Labor Party, you will vote this way, or the Liberal Party, you'll vote this way. And that'll give some people a let off so that they can go conscience vote. And that's another aspect to the plebiscite. The Liberal Party have said that they won't force their MPs to actually vote in accordance with the plebiscite outcome, because it's a non-binding vote. It's not a referendum. A referendum, people vote in favour of something, then government's got to go and put it through. A plebiscite is meant to be just an indicative vote. And we've had lots of MPs sort of going, well, you know, I don't care if Australian public say yes, I'm going to vote against it because I couldn't in conscience. So what the hell is the point of spending, you know, $160 odd million just to gauge the public reaction that we already know? You know, the public is overwhelmingly in support of marriage equality. But the other problem is trying to get this get the wording of the actual, the premise right. So it's marriage equality, full stop. It isn't just same-sex marriage, because we've got a situation here where if a couple stays together and one partner transitions and they go through having gender reassignment surgery, they technically have to divorce.
Yeah, it's the same in Scotland. Even though we've got marriage equality, in theory, you still have to do the divorce and remarry.
Wow, that sucks. That kind of leads to another interesting story. The South Australian state government voted on a proposal to actually remove the requirement for gender reassignment surgery from changing gender on birth certificates. And it was a 6-6 vote, and the chair, voted against it, as is convention. So that did not get through. So there's still a requirement to have your bits chopped off.
Then, if it did go through, would it still actually have any bearing? Because technically in the UK, you don't have to have had any medical or surgical intervention, but they want to know why, and very, very few people get a gender recognition certificate if they've not demonstrated they've had medical and surgical intervention. Yeah,
yet we happily trumpet that we're one of the countries that no longer requires sterilisation for gender recognition, but A, it pretty much does, and B, we don't recognise all genders. So.
No.
Yeah. So lots happening down under.
Yeah. It's interesting then, because there's an awful lot of the same kind of stuff going on. Some of it slightly behind, some of it slightly ahead. And I guess it's the whole world's kind of going through this in a minute, and there's politicians are thrashing about.
Something that came out today, which was Norway now allows you to just self-declare on an internet form. But not only that, they're with only Malta that allows under 18s to do it, in fact down to about 6 with parental permission. So there's only 5 countries in the world that allow you to self-declare your gender identity without having to have doctor's certificates and so on. It's Argentina, Ireland, Denmark, Malta, and now Norway.
Yeah. But yeah, in fact, that's just come up on the Q&A as well. So that Norway have made that change. So that's step in the right direction. It's good.
I mean, there's talk fairly recent, just before the Scottish parliamentary elections. I went along to an LGBTI hustings. That's where Nicola Sturgeon announced that well, this has sort of got to come through, but one, provide legislation to recognise non-binary identities. Two, make provision for self-declaration. Also, three, change this whole marriage difficulty about the divorce, and also try and abolish this spousal veto as well. That's something is that unique to the UK, or is that elsewhere as well, the spousal veto?
I think that's one of our.
I think it's unique,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no doubt that something similar might happen elsewhere, but as far as I'm aware, it's just ours. So I'm interested actually. So, in terms of what's the general atmosphere like towards trans people in Australia at the moment? How does it feel at the moment?
There's some good stories, and where good media handles it well, it helps things out. The ABC, which is like your BBC, has a weekly story called The Australian Story, which is an in-depth personal interview or story about one person, their family situation, whatever it is that made them remarkable. They did a very good story lately about a young girl, Georgie, and particularly the fight that her family had to get approval to take puberty stopping pausing medication. They knew from a very early age about her gender, and they were trying to stop her, developing all the problems that we deal with, having gone through puberty. And you have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops with the family court, and they're leading a campaign against that. That story was really sensitively handled. It's a beautiful kid and a beautiful story, and done well by the media. More examples of that really help. I go out just about every day, and people notice, and we just roll with it. The number of people that have given me a bad look, or have said something, I can count on one hand out of many people that I interact with, and shopkeepers and everything. Everyone's pretty casual. It just sort of like it's just another person getting on with life.
That's good to know. Yeah. Wasn't it?
Except in social media and comments and stuff, and that's where all the keyboard superheroes get ugly. But
yeah,
we're at dust.
You do wonder exactly. You do wonder what they're like, what they would be like in real life, don't you? But, okay, yeah. So yes. So just come back to the Q&A then. So there's a couple of points on there. Someone's pointing out that wasn't there. Hitting my other laptop. Wasn't there someone who went through a court in Scotland recently to get their marriage certificate changed, and weren't they successful? This rings a bell that this happened. I don't know what the process was, but possibly. I guess, Charlotte, you would be best placed to know, given that you are our reporter on the ground in Scotland.
I live here, but I can't comment on that case. I'm not aware of that one. There's certainly positive moves. So yeah, we've had marriage equality now since last December, I think I want to say. But yeah, so I think people can change. There's some discrepancy over dates. So if you've got married since then, there's no issue whatsoever. But if you got married before, it's trying to backdate it is a bit of an. But I think it's all just bureaucratic and legalese things now. So I think I'm hoping it's going to move forwards, but I can't comment on the specific details of that.
And there's the whole thing, isn't there, around that if you get married in a church, your marriage certificate can no longer reflect the fact that you were married in a church, because You can't get married in a church, so you have to get married in the nearest registry office or something.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
What really winds me up about all of this is it's like they're trying to invent special rules for trans people to fit us around the existing system that's a bit flawed anyway. I mean, why can't they just unwind the legislation and just say anybody can marry anybody and it's fine? It doesn't matter. Yeah. You can marry who you want. You can declare your gender to be what you want. The state does not need to know. The state should not care. That's just unravel it all.
I mean, they bring up the point. It's just like, oh, well, there's differences in pension. You go, well, there shouldn't be differences in pension either.
Exactly, yeah.
That's totally unfair. That's always a whole other topic.
Yeah. And then don't get me started on the whole point that actually marriage equality is quite an easy one to sell, because marriage is a fundamentally conservative institution, and that therefore it is quite an easy one to get people to buy into, and it doesn't mean equality in the broader scheme. But let's not go there for now.
It may have been. You know, marriage was originally, you know, a church institution, but surely society's moved on from that. It's about two people who want to spend their lives together, and you know, no, I didn't go anywhere near a church. So while the churches are desperately trying to hang on to their relevance, I think the rest, you know, lots of other people can sort of go, you know what, it started off with you guys, but the world as a whole owns marriage now, and anyone should be able to marry.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we'll move on from this now. There's some good chat going on in the Q&A, so thank you for that, about some of the previous topics we talked about. So what we'll do is we'll come back to those at the end. But what we want to do now, and again, and in fact, if there's anything else that's happened recently or anything at all that you want us to talk about, then do. You know, just drop us a line and let us know what you want to talk about. But let's move on now to a related topic. So we've talked about us all being in different parts of the world. Well, what about traveling between those different parts of the world? So, you know, we've all, well, I think all of us now have done a degree of traveling whilst being trans, because we've always been trans, therefore we have. But what's it like traveling whilst being a transgender person and being an out transgender person? So, experiences to talk about. I've been to the US recently. But who wants to kick us off with telling us a little bit about their experiences of traveling while being trans?
I can. So I travel domestically on flights frequently. Obviously, I'm flying down to London with the one of us here, and yeah, so you're going through security, never get any issues. Once was randomly selected to go through the body scanner in Heathrow, something that I'd was terrified of based on all of the stories you hear coming out on Twitter about people going through these and the dreaded anomaly. And oh look, there it was, anomaly. And but the staff were totally like, oh, just no, that's all fine, on you go. And just as I was taking an in-breath to go, well, but didn't need to. Either they knew and it was good training, or they thought, nah, it's wrong. Not going to be that kind of device. Anyway, without going into too much detail. So, travelling between airports.
I had to travel back to Belgium. I had my facial surgery in Belgium. Part of the first operation was to put a balloon in my head. And for the second operation, I travelled back, and my head set off the scanner at Eurostar terminal. So they stopped me and sent me back through, and it went off again. And eventually, they had to have a handheld scanner and scan my head. So that was wonderful. But they were all plans, and they let me through. And they let me back in again, even though my face looked nothing like my passport photo.
Yeah, don't you just think?
Show my ear.
surgery you have or anything you do, you can't change the biometrics of your face, which is what a lot of facial recognition goes on. So it's eye spacing, nose in the center of your face, the distance between mouth and so on. So, and those things don't change. So I was talking to someone who traveled to America for some facial surgery, and they were terrified they wouldn't be allowed back into the country, but it still recognised them as who they were.
Charlie, you obviously haven't seen the documentary Face Off.
No, I refuse to watch
Documentary.
Yes,
I
well,
haven't seen it either, to be honest. I just assumed that there was a face in it.
Well,
So,
do you have a head transplant then?
well, one day.
The Italian doctor wanted to do, wasn't there? Didn't you hear about that a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Transplant.
So it's an interesting way, actually. So obviously, a lot of trans people go abroad for facial surgery, or trans women anyway, go abroad for facial surgery. And yeah, you've got to travel back into the country, and you don't look like you did before, and your passport's out of date.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, and I know lots of people have done that, and I've heard of surprisingly few difficulties. I mean, generally people have a letter from the surgeon that says this is why I look different now. But
the biometrics don't change. That's the thing.
You think it
so
would?
So what
though,
is measured doesn't change.
My nose changed, my top lip changed, my eyes changed.
But the position of them didn't.
I had to show my ears to get through on the final journey, my third fix. I'd show my ears.
Isn't that that's someone looking at a photograph? That's not the computer recording the spacing.
Yeah. That's true. That was someone. That was a real person.
Yeah. So a computer doing spacings, you can't change the spacings. You can't move your eyes. You can't move your nose. You can change the shape of it, but you can't move it. So biometrically,
I'm going to prove you wrong somehow. I'm going to move my eye.
Oh God, that'd be awful. The biometric comes up with your arm there or something.
Up here. So actually, someone makes the point on the Q&A just now that they've done face transplants now. But I guess maybe they don't transplant your eye; they just do the bits of skin.
It's still the same. Your eyes are still in the same place. So, and
yeah, because it's your skull.
Within a face transplant, you end up being an amalgam of the two people. So you've got some of the soft tissue features of the donor, but you still have the hard bone features of the recipient, and then the product is visually to someone looking different, but to a computer measuring spacings, you can't change it. You just need to go
through Heathrow Terminal 5, and it's all automated, and you just sail straight through.
Yeah.
So, let me talk about me. So I went to the US recently, and so I was there for 2.5 weeks, and on the travel in and out, absolutely fine. I was really pleasantly surprised because I've read a lot and heard a lot of slightly worrying stories about airport security in the US and travel in. And so I was a bit nervous, but it was absolutely fine. And I suspect part of that might be that a lot of the people I've heard slightly scary stories from are sort of impeccably cis-passing people who they might have approached and they might have thought, this is a cis woman, I'll treat them as a woman. Oh, what the hell's going on here? This is some sort of anomaly. Whereas, of course, I'm not. So they probably knew what was happening well beforehand. They just were fine. I guess the part of America I went to was probably a factor. So I was flying in and out of Newark International. So it's by New York City. So I guess they've seen trans women before. Whereas I guess if I was flying out of, I don't know, Brady Bunch International in Texas, then it probably would have been different. I don't know whether that was a cultural reference that makes sense. I'm not really good at that. So
Q&A.
Yeah, please tell us on the Q&A what the hell I'm talking about. But anyway, so America generally found it really good. I was in New York City for some of it. Most of the time I was in kind of semi-rural New Jersey, and absolutely fine. In fact, they treated me a lot better than I get treated in the UK. I didn't get misgendered once. I didn't get anything shouted at me. everybody was nice. People stared a bit, but then people stare at you a little bit more in the US anyway, apparently, because they look at people a little bit more. It's not like the tube in London where they just kind of look at the ground. So I was pleasantly surprised. Good experience. It was my first international travel since transition. First time I've been abroad for 2.5 years. The last time was Russia, so I won't be going to again. But yeah, so my experience has been good. I mean, that's my only outside of the UK travel since transition. So that's all I've got to talk about. But certainly, I found it better than the UK.
I've travelled to South America. I went to Buenos Aires. No problems whatsoever. I mean, everyone says Argentina is a very trans-friendly place. It's like, I was a little worried because it's like, well, legislation's trans-friendly, but are the population trans-friendly? And shortly before I went, I was finding out about 3 trans women had been murdered in Buenos Aires. So I was thinking, uh-oh. But the thing is, you don't hear the context of that, and then it's just statistical aberration that 3 happened in 1 month. The rest of the year were very few. When I was there, I had no issues whatsoever. Didn't perceive any staring, any hostile looks, My Spanish isn't fantastic, but I didn't hear any of the target words I was listening out for. And then going through airport security was no issue at all. So, yeah, fine. Reassuringly fine.
So is that travelling on your original passports, all of you, or have you had passports changed?
Changed passport.
Yeah, changed. Quite easy.
Yep,
in the UK.
likewise.
Passport's
Yeah,
probably the easiest idea, actually.
Yeah,
I'm yet to pursue that, but I saw the problems that another woman had travelling when she had dual British and Italian passports, trying to get into, I think it was Canada.
This one, it was
or America.
an Argentine and Italian passports.
Yeah,
That's it. Yeah.
she had a very complex situation, didn't she? Where she was travelling to Canada. The details might be incorrect, but the thrust of it is saying she's travelling to Argentina, I believe, on the Italian passport because she didn't need a visa, but Italy won't let you update your details. So she also had the Argentinian passport, which did have updated details.
That's right.
I think this was Glasgow International, wasn't it, Charlotte? They wouldn't accept.
Glasgow, yeah, she was.
They wouldn't accept her papers, even though she had a letter explaining the situation. She wasn't very well treated at all. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of slightly scary stories.
That wasn't an issue of travelling to countries. That was an airline.
Yeah, that was Air Transat.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so that was the airline's fault. It wasn't Canada, Italy, Argentina, or Scotland. It was Air Transat's fault.
Well, other than Italy for not letting her make a passport, but yeah.
Well, yes.
Yeah, but yeah.
But there's people that do travel under there because your passport's still valid. It's like I did change my passport. I still have 9 years left on the previous one, but I just thought I don't want to be explaining that. So, but it's still valid. You can still travel on it. You don't really want to have to.
No,
and obviously it depends where you're going. So some places having that appropriate name and gender on your passport might be quite important, and for visa purposes sometimes as well. I mean, I'm not sure how the US would have been with my visa being in one name and my passport being in another, and it was work flights, so I couldn't really travel under a different name too easily.
I think it's really important.
To
change passport as soon as possible, because if you get into trouble in the country you're going to, your passport is your ID. That's what they're going to look at if they're going to deal with you. So I think get it changed as soon as you.
I suppose this can take us onto a little subtopic of gender markers, because there's a discussion of whether we do away with gender markers or not. And my personal view is I want to keep that F, but I think you should have the option of having an X for non-binary people who don't identify as M or F. But I don't think
or no gender marker. Yeah.
But yeah, make it a free choice.
Question from Australia, because Australia, don't you have no gender marker on your passport?
Oh, I don't know. I just have a quick look. I happen to have it sitting here.
This is
I think
live.
that's one of the countries
No,
that don't have gender
it
markers.
definitely has an M there.
Where is it? Because we were reading, because they were talking about it in response to the trans inquiry here, and they said, "Oh well, here they don't have gender markers." So
there are a few places. There are a few places that can have an X, and I believe Germany is one. And Germany, you can have an X from birth if you're intersex. I think they will give you an X from birth, so that you can decide later. I think. Someone tell me in the chat if I'm wrong. But a German told me that. So, and talking about the chat, let's have a quick look at what's on there, because there's a few interesting contributions that have come up in there. So again, our friend of the show, 30-something and trans, says that she travelled to South Korea via China and back again, no issues. And obviously China is one of the places that you might otherwise be slightly worried about, given that they're some of their laws there, so that's good news. She also went to Spain after FFS on her old passport, but no issue, so that's good. I think broadly, in the larger European airports, they've all seen this before, and they're probably fine. I think we possibly do worry too much. The only comment was from UK Customs asking when she started growing her hair, which I guess is an interesting one. Another comment, obviously, there was recently we had Gigi Gorgeous that got into trouble going into Dubai, I think it was. So they wouldn't let her in and sent her back, and that was all a bit unsavoury. I mean, frankly, I'm not sure why she was expecting to get into Dubai, because they haven't got a great reputation on trans issues, and I certainly wouldn't be going there. But nevertheless, she tried, and she was turned away. So.
An awful lot of flights going to Australia, New Zealand, and so on do have stopovers in Dubai, and you do have to be very careful about which flights you choose.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the Emirates airlines are huge these days. It's part of their drive to be an international hub, and so Emirates tons and tons of routes. And yeah, I say a lot of the better priced flights to Asia and to Australia and New Zealand they stop off there. So it is tricky.
Yeah, I mean, some people say if you're not trying to enter the country itself, you're probably fine. But is it a chance you want to take?
Well, exactly. She was famous enough that she got some interventions and got back. But I think if it was me, there's a very good chance I might still be there.
Yeah, I recently declined a conference invitation to Dubai. It's just like, sorry, no. I'm not going to speak in Dubai.
Do we feel that careers are going to be harmed by being trans because we can't travel everywhere?
Well, mine already has been, I would argue.
It's dangerous to go.
Yeah, I would say mine already has been, because the company I work for uses Russia quite a lot, and I had to say I can't really go there. So a lot of the stuff that's in my industry requires travel to Russia, so it's kind of limiting. I
did notice that Fox Fisher's
not the biggest problem in the world. I still have a job. But...
Yeah, Fox Fisher's just been to Russia, hasn't he? He seems
yeah.
But I guess it's one of the things where you can chance it, and if you pass perfectly, you're fine. But
I think that's the crux of it, isn't it? If you're impeccably cis passing and you're confident about it, and you can pass for cis in all situations, then you might well be okay. And obviously, I guess this is where masculine people probably have a slight advantage, because they're less visible, and by that I mean they're not as historically kind of not obvious but well documented as trans women are, or trans feminine people. So I expect that's a kind of a little advantage that won't last very long, but that might be at play here as well.
And if you're a trans man watching this, please join us.
Yeah, please come and tell us whether that's true or not. So, I'm conscious of time. We've only got a few minutes left. Last call for anything on the Q&A that we haven't talked about. We have got a tweet, which is an interesting point, actually. Now, I don't know much about this, so I'm going to throw this out there and we'll have a little brief conversation about it. But talking about marriage discrepancies. So this person is saying that consummation rules are different dependent on legal genders, which is a worry being asexual. So that's an interesting point, one I've not really considered, but I'm not sure what the state of play is with consummation rules at the moment, but it's apparently different with different genders. So if you're asexual, what does that mean? Does anyone know much about that? I think that's an interesting point.
That's a hangover from like cis marriage, isn't it? Male and female marriage, but is it relevant? I mean, this is to get a marriage annulled if there's no sex, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's, I guess that's, if that's still on the statute books, then that's an interesting one. But yeah, if you're asexual, then you're not going to be doing that. So.
But okay, let's bring in from another viewpoint. How does one prove consummation? Now, I mean, obviously, historically, you'd inspect the wedding bed, but people are
I don't know. I'm not.
Going into a marriage. Sorry?
I'm not qualified to say, but if it's still on the statute book, then I can understand that would be a concern.
How is it proved? It's only proved by somebody saying something. So surely you can just declare that it's like, well, however it's consummated, whether it's consummated verbally, just say, yes, I love you and we're together. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think it's one for the couple, a private thing to say, what they define as. Whether it's
another hangover that needs to go. It's irrelevant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Another one of those church hangovers from centuries ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just need to update the wording and get rid of that bit, I think.
Yeah. If the marriage is ended, if they don't want to be married anymore, then you get divorced and say irreconcilable differences. That's fine. For whatever reason.
Yep. The legislation's already there for it. Okay. Well, if there's no more, so I think we've exhausted the topics we had to talk about. We've exhausted the ones that came in. Thank you so much, everybody, for engaging with us on the chat and on Twitter. It's been really useful. I'm so glad we got this working this time. Hopefully, we'll have it more in future. It's really useful to have your input. Thank you to everyone who's been on the show. So thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Lisa. One thing I want to talk about before we go is about nGendr generally. So we're still looking for people to come and help us do stuff. Clearly, we're always looking for contributions. We want to get contributions from the whole wealth of different trans and non-binary identities. We want contributions from non-binary people, from trans masculine people or non-binary trans feminine people. We want contributions from trans and non-binary people of colour, from trans and non-binary people with disabilities, your atypical trans and non-binary people. We want loads more. We want to try and really represent everybody and give people a voice. We're very conscious that at the moment we're quite white trans women on the site, and we want that to change. And when I say get involved, I don't mean just contributing stuff. We want people to get involved in the governance of the site as well, so that we can be truly representative. So please do get in touch. Easiest way to do that is to email us at email@nGendr, so emailngendr@gmail.com, or just tweet us and we can go from there. Or just comment on the YouTube video. But I'll be honest, email us is probably the best thing, or tweet us, because there's a lot to cope with. But we're looking for help with, as I said, with contributions, with governance. We want people to help us on the social media. If you're not confident writing or you're not confident in front of a camera, that doesn't matter. There's loads of other stuff you can do. We're not really good at Facebook, so somebody can help us with that. We've got an Instagram, we can post some pictures for that. So it's not just writing, it's loads of other stuff as well. So anyway, please get in touch with us if you want to help out. You could even come on the video if you want to. So, but I think that's all. So again, thank you all for watching. If you've missed any of it, you can watch it on YouTube later.
We have a
anyway,
special
let's go bye from Charlotte. She's about to disappear.
Yeah, sorry, battery's dying. I'll be back on in a sec.
Bye. Bye from Lisa.
Oh, stop shutting down. I've got power.
So Charlotte's gone. And thanks to Ashley for joining us at a really unsavoury time in the morning. Thank you for your contributions. It's been really useful.
4 o'clock start and ready for breakfast. It's been great to join you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And thank you from me. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, hopefully. And goodbye.